Hello again. As promised, I'm back with another video talking about the very popular books that I read in the past year or so that I DNF'd. All of these books are beloved, and I either didn't like it or just put it down in the middle for whatever reason and never went back. Sometimes that's because I just get a new book and I'm excited about it and I want to read it more, and so I just kind of give up. I know I shouldn't do that and that I should just power through, but you know, our time on Earth is limited and I don't necessarily want to finish reading a book that I'm not enjoying, so I will just put it down sometimes, and sometimes it's not because it's bad, it's just that it's just not what I'm looking for, if that makes sense. So let's get into it and I'll talk about it and tell you all of my reasons. Alright, so since it's the time of year where everyone is recommending their fall reads, I'm going to start with the two books that I often see on fall suggestion books, or sorry, fall suggestion lists that I tried reading and did not enjoy. And the first one is Uprooted. This book, widely known and loved. I did enjoy the premise. It did sort of seem like it was a little too simplified for my liking. Like, the events that take place are just sort of, it's like, oh yeah, this happens, and like, that's kind of crazy, but then it's fine, and then other things happen, and then, oh, this is crazy, but then it's fine. So, in a similar way to the way I was talking about Wheel of Time, I felt that way with this book, only because I was interested in it for a while, and interested. I love the idea of the dark, creepy forest where something evil or magical is happening, and they have to go into this very dangerous forest and fight back or figure out why this is happening. And so I really like that aspect of it, but it becomes repetitive. Things happen, and that's sort of it. Like, oh, this thing happened, and then we go back to the castle, and then this other thing happened, and we fight it, and then we go back to the castle. And I went through that cycle a few times, and then just fell off. I thought the writing was pretty good. I don't really have complaints about the writing. Like I said, I was enjoying it initially, and then it just got kind of repetitive, and I got a little bit bored. And so I just stopped reading. But I know people really love this book. There is a chance I might go back to this one. But like I said before, slow reader. I don't like wasting my time. Wasn't super fascinated by this one. I liked the theme. I liked the initial sort of cycle of things that occur, but then once it happens a couple of times, it's like, yeah, I can see where this is going, or I don't really care anymore. And so, I mean, I think this is worth a shot. If this sounds like a book that you like from, like, the description, I feel like there's a very good chance that you will like it. It just wasn't really for me, so there's that. Okay, so this next one is another book that's constantly recommended for the fall season, and I think the writer is a very good writer. I just didn't like certain aspects, and that is Slewfoot by Brom. Obviously recommended constantly, very spooky, very fall vibe. I loved the introduction of this woman on a farm in, I don't know, the 16 or 1700s, and something evil is happening in the forest. Love that intro. Was super hooked. And this is going to be a bit of a spoiler, so if you don't want spoilers for this book, you're planning on reading it, then skip ahead, I would say. But the evil force in this book, I feel like it would have been much better. I would have liked it much more if it was more like hidden or suggested at without being fully acknowledged. Like, if she was wondering what was going on the entire time, instead of the reader just knowing. So the evil force in this book is like a couple of characters who the perspective will switch to, and it's acknowledged exactly what they are, and they're talking about, you know, what they're going to do, their evil deeds, so on and so forth. And I did not like that at all. In the same way that, like, when I watch a horror movie, I hate when they show the monster. It's much scarier to imagine it or to not know what is happening than to just know. So I feel like it's obvious that the unknown is always scarier than what is, and this book almost immediately tells you exactly, not necessarily what's going on, but shows you into the mind of the monster immediately. And I bounced off of it pretty hardcore at that point, because if I don't have that mystery in it, then I just don't really care as much. I don't want to know the monster. I don't want to know what the evil is thinking. I want it to be an unknown. I want it to be a surprise. I want to see through the eyes of the main character as they figure out what's going on. I find it much less appealing to read about a character who doesn't know what's going on when I already know what's going on. That sort of sucks the mystery out of it. Like, it would be like reading a detective novel, where the whole time the detective is trying to figure out this murder, but you've known all along who done it. What is the point of that? I don't know. So, that being said, I didn't get very far. Let's see, I got to page 90. So maybe I'm not giving it enough credit. Like I said, I think Brom is a great writer. The prose is amazing. Does a great job at that creepy feeling. But the creepy feeling goes away once I know the monster. So it did not work for me. Let me know what your thoughts are if you've read this, because I know tons of people have read it and love it. If it gets better, if it is not what I think it is, if it's something else entirely, maybe there's a twist, I don't know. But I just wasn't invested, so I stopped reading it. Sorry. Okay, so this next book, to show you how beloved it is, I want to read you the synopsis on the back. I guess you should just know ahead of time. It's The Once and Future King. I didn't like this book, and I'll tell you why in a moment, but the synopsis on the back is, "The whole world knows and loves this book. It is the magical epic of King Arthur and his shining Camelot, of Merlin and Owl and Guinevere, of beasts who talk and men who fly, of wizardry and war. It is the book of all things lost and wonderful and sad. It is the fantasy masterpiece by which all others are judged." And I didn't like it. So, I have a reason. I bounced off of this book because it was far more magical than I expected. I have never really read anything about King Arthur. I don't really know the stories that well. I know there was like a King Arthur Disney movie or something. I don't think I've ever seen it. I basically know nothing about King Arthur. So I really wanted to read something about it, and I had a friend who was like, "I love this book so much, it's so great, you should read this." And so I picked up a copy and I started reading it, and I was like, what is this? So at the very beginning, Merlin is introduced, and there is so much weird magic that's going on. and it felt like a book for children. And if that's your thing, obviously there's nothing wrong with that, but like I didn't want to read like a children's fairy tale. I thought this was going to be about like a knight and a king and obviously Merlin, but when I imagined him, I was thinking that it was going to be like this wizard who has like potions and like spells that do minor things. I was not expecting the level of fantasy, I guess, how fantastical it was like actually going to be. So it was off-putting. I think I was expecting more medieval vibe, less fantasy vibe, but it was hardcore fantasy. So I bounced off of it. That being said, I think I am going to try this book again, because as I said, I don't know anything really about King Arthur. Never read anything about King Arthur, and I feel like I could love it. And I think now, knowing what I know about what this book is like, I can go into it expecting that, and try again. And maybe knowing that ahead of time will make it more enjoyable. So this is one I'm definitely going to try to give a second chance to at some point. I just think it's funny how much the synopsis on the back praises this book and how hardcore I bounced off of it. So I DNF'd this a while ago, but I think I will eventually go back to it. Okay, the next one is one of my boyfriend's all-time favorite books. He introduced me to Robin Hobb, and then he suggested that I read this, and so I was like, alright, like, I'll give it a shot, you seem to know what's up. And that is The Black Company, by Glenn Cook. So, I didn't like how vague it was at the beginning. I don't think I've ever gotten more, I've tried it a couple times, I don't think I've ever gotten more than like 100 pages in. My brother has also read these, and I was talking to him about them recently, and I was like, do they ever get more specific about what they're talking about? Do you ever know what's actually going on? And he's like, oh yeah, like you figure it out, you get context along the way, and it's really good. And I believe it. I just had such a hard time because the author throws you into this scenario without describing what's going on, and you're just sort of like floating along over the shoulder of this character, and there's nothing explicit about what's happening, and you are supposed to just pick up context clues along the way. My brain just had a hard time sorting through that, so I bounced off of it, I think twice. But this is another one that I do want to try to go back to. It sounds like, you know, people love it. It sounds like a really great series once you're able to get into it, once you have that context down. I just had a really hard time with it at first, but I do want to try it again and just sort of try to power through the first couple 100 pages or so I can figure out what's going on, and then hopefully we'll love it. But this is a book, I feel like that's sort of a common thing, though I don't think I'm alone in having a hard time with The Black Company. As much as it's loved, I think a lot of people feel the same way as me, where it's like, this is like difficult and I don't know what's happening and I don't care enough to like push through. But because of the way my brother and my boyfriend have talked about it, it does interest me. It does sound like something that I would like. I love Dark Souls and Elden Ring, and absolutely love the vibe of that. And it seems like this is sort of in that vein, in that vibe. So I should like it if I can get into it. Getting into it is going to be the hard part, but I definitely will try this again at some point. Yeah. So this last one is a book. I actually didn't DNF this. I kind of did in a way, because I'd say the last 20 pages or so I just skimmed because I wasn't invested anymore. but I technically did finish it, and that is Arrows of the Queen by Mercedes Lackey. I picked up this book because I watched another booktuber who talks about fantasy. She recommended this and was talking about how it was like one of her favorite books of all time and how great it was. And I don't agree. I liked it at first. It gives off very classic fantasy vibes. Great atmospheric book about like a girl and like a young girl who lives in a horrible household, and magical things happen, and she has this magical horse companion, and I liked that aspect of it. But there's a lot where the horse like isn't even involved, and like it just doesn't seem like a well thought out story to me. Even as a book written sort of aimed at a younger audience, it just doesn't seem that well thought out. I felt like there was some editing that could go on. Also, spoiler if you haven't read it, but at the end, there is a paragraph that is essentially like, oh, by the way, because of the strong magical bond that the main character and the horse have, she can tell when the horse is having sex. And the horse is like a stud, so he's having sex a lot. But never mind that, on to the end of the book, blah, blah, blah. It's like referenced, and then they just move on. And I don't understand why that was necessary. It feels very much like in Robin Hobb books, how they have the wit. They're connected to like this magical mental connection with animals. It was almost like she was trying to allude to the fact that the main character has the wit and is connected to the horse in that way. So she knows that when the horse is having sex. But it just seems so unnecessary and so weird to mention without like analyzing that at all, especially because the main character is a child. I don't know if that comes into play, and I think this is a series, so it'll come into play like later in the series or not. It just seemed very weird. That's not why I didn't like it. That was just part of the example of how it felt not very well thought out. I wonder if she's like a what is the writer types, a discovery writer, and she just sat down and without plotting and was just like, and then this happens, and then this happens, and this happens, and also she has a really close mental connection to her horse, and the end. So, needless to say, not a huge fan of this book. I'm all set with the rest of them. I think it's an interesting fantasy world. I liked the setup, but overall, it didn't feel super cohesive. It wasn't that compelling to me. I'm not a horse girl, never been that into horses, so that aspect doesn't really hook me that much. So, that's that. It was a super popular book that I don't like. And so that's all there. So yeah. Hello. I realized that I forgot to film an outro for my video, and I was just gonna leave it how it was and just put a little like title card at the end that was like, I'm so sorry that I forgot to do this, but I felt bad about that and I didn't want to do it that way, so I'm filming just this quick little thing to say thank you so much for watching. I'm not totally sure what my next video might be. It will probably be like a review of some of the books that I've read, or something like that, from my TBR, my fall TBR list. Or who knows, it might be an analysis of one of the books I've read over the past year or so. But if you have any ideas of things you want me to talk about, or videos that you would be interested in, be sure to let me know, and I would love to do whatever you're looking for, essentially. You know, there's only so many ideas that I can think of without, you know, basically stopping to read for a while. So, you know, if you have ideas for things you want to see, let me know, and I would be really grateful for that. And thank you so much for watching, and I will see you again very soon.